Welcome to another edition of Freedom Beyond the Bars. I'm your host, George Masterson, and today we feature Daryl Samnarayan Singh, convicted in 2006 for the crime of kidnapping. This is his story. Welcome, Daryl, to Freedom Beyond the Bars.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Daryl, you were convicted in 2006 for the crime of kidnapping.
Yes, I will.
Before 2006, what was life for Daryl on the outside?
Well, for me, life on the outside, if we're looking at growing up, more or less, it's what you would call a typical young East Indian guy living in a typical East Indian village in the countryside. So it was a bit of bittersweet because you had your challenges as well as you had your good times. In the country, there is no distinction with regards to religious celebrations or public festival as such. We take part and we get involved in everything and anything. So it's Eid, Diwali, Christmas, Emancipation, any and every activity. As a young guy growing up in the country, we get involved in everything. So it was the bursting of bamboos, the decorating Christmas trees. You go to the mandir when the mosque have something, you attend as well, because it's small communal type setting. You go to the mandir. I grew up in a Hindu home. Hindu society was the cradle of my heritage. So I was schooled along the Vedantic way of thinking, which is a little more in keeping with the Ramayana and the Gita and things like that. But I've had friends, and I still do have friends who are actively involved in the church, and I participated before on the outside, and to some extent, even their visits here in the past, getting involved in programs that they were even allowed to get into that were prison-oriented, and we mingled from time to time.
You were charged in 2006 for a crime of kidnapping.
To be a little more precise, my conviction was in 2006. I was charged in 2002 for the offense of kidnapping. I was then an active police officer, and I have served for approximately 15 years in the police service. I had the benefit of working throughout the service in various sections. We had I had the benefit of working in specialized areas and different units. Thankfully, coming out of that, I've had a lot of experience in different aspects of policing, from the survival aspect to the tactical aspect to the investigative aspect, and that, a lot of which has helped me to endure what I've come to expect and did not expect, being prison.
You were convicted in 2006.
2006.
Entering prison to serve a sentence. What was that experience like, being locked up? Tell me your experience. How did you adapt to prison life? What was your first night like in a prison cell?
First night in a prison cell. I think the reality of being not only charged with the crime, but being convicted with the crime, because I was no stranger to the courts in Trinidad and Tobago. I have arrested people, took them to court, and went through the rigors of a trial. Going to court as a police officer is one thing. Being a defendant, having to look at your peers, look at you, and having to be in a position where you are now answerable for things is very different from being the one on the other side who is presumably the supporting aspect of being the accusing party. So coming out of that experience, being convicted, was in itself a shock. But having brought to prison was not so much a shock, because I would have had the experience of having been to the barracks as a young man at 19 years old, and you had to go through the rigors of getting involved and getting engaged in environments that are new to you, having to go through the rigors of something that is new to you. Coming in prison, you have a similar set experience because you're meeting officers who have a similar measure of training and that type of discipline, so you would expect the rigors of giving instructions and taking instructions. I think it dawned on me that I was in prison when I was actually placed in a cell after all the talk was said and done, and I heard that gate slam behind me. It then effectively dawned on me what I was about to face. And I think going through that night was, if I could recall, it was incredibly difficult to adjust to, because I don't think I slept at all, and if I did, it was, you know, I just fell off because of exhaustion. There was a million things going through your mind at any one time. Firstly, you would not even give thought to where you were, because I started to think about my family, being separated from them. I think about the health of my parents. I think about my young brothers. You think about your job. What it's going to be like now. Is it that I have lost everything? And then you look at the whole new environment. How am I going to survive? Life for me, I've realized, is going to be very, very different, because even the uncongeniality of being in a prison, you would expect some measure of harshness and hardness. But then being a police officer in prison, it was going to be very, very different, because on entry, I was placed under separation. But even on separation, I've met people themselves who were on separation, and even the comments and the criticism coming out of them was in itself disparaging. So you had to deal with that. And like everything else, you would meet people who would be somewhat supportive, give you an encouraging word, you know, telling you, well, look, it's not going to be difficult. Your first week is going to be difficult, but you're going to be adjusted to this. And then they're looking at a 17-year sentence and telling you, hey, that's a sleep and a week. At first, I didn't understand the expression, a sleep and a week, but it meant that you're going to finish this in no time at all, given the fact that some people have been here for 40 years and upwards. So what you got, and you're a young fella, so they're calculating, well, you're going to be out by, and called for me a grand old age that I could not have perceived at the time, that, you know, I would slowly journey towards.
How long did it take you to fully adapt, to come to terms and accept the sentence, and to look for opportunities or ways in the different programs to really, you know, go through your sentence more purposeful, or at the end of your sentence being meaningful to your life after release?
On entry in 2006, I was still on appeal. So I had to go through the rigors of going through the appeal court and the Privy Council and all of that. During that period, as a police officer in separation, you were not allowed back then to be actively involved with other members of the population. For obvious reasons, one, and the most important that they cite, is your safety. So because of your safety, you were not allowed to get involved in too much of programs. You were given what was the basic stipulations, which is your airing, and you would be allowed to collect your meals, and you know, primarily that was about it. So, you know, more in the closer answer your question with regards to how long did it take me to accept my sentence. I don't think to this day I can comfortably say that I have accepted the sentence as not only, apart from the fact that 12 people sat, whether I was, whatever my perception, whether I was guilty or not guilty by action or inaction otherwise, whether I think the trial was, it was fair or otherwise, the fact is I was found guilty. So that is a perception that I had to deal with. That is a reality that I had to deal with. I had to also deal with the fact that I was here, and I was going to be here for some time. That is, on the expiration of the Privy Council's ruling. So during that time, it took some time. On conviction, when I was placed in what you will call the blue, the population, I think then they observe behavior, they observe your attitude, your ability to interact. They do somewhat of a risk assessment. And then I was told, well, it will be okay for me to be among the population, but still somewhat separated. So they kept service personnel together with the teachers from the school and other selected individuals. So I was placed among that group of people. Fortunately for me, they were a bunch of focused, directed, and positive-minded individuals. And I think being placed in that environment was a huge support for me. There was a lot that I think I knew that I did not. There was a lot that I was not aware that I did not know. And I think the experience coming out of that with these individuals, one having been in jail for a pretty long time, and two coming from similar environments for me. Because I met guys who were Coast Guards, who were a lawyer. I met a superintendent of police. I met prison officers who had spent some time. So you had a hodgepodge of experience. And I was yet young, being brought into that environment with them. So for me, it aided me a lot to harbor that type of experience. My journey along together with these guys, because of their presence in my life at that time, aided me along prison life. Because though we would be making contact with the general population, I still have the assuaging support of these directed minds. So they helped me to stay away from activities, because they would be able to see on an instant where a particular involvement with an individual who might be willing to lead you in a certain direction, and at no point in time they would hesitate to tell you, look, hey, this individual is not being sincere in their approach. They may ask you for this, they may ask you to do this, be careful. So as a service person, being in that environment was a huge, like I said, support and a guide. So to resettle into the activities of population life, because in the population it opened me to the VOCTEC centers, the programs, the schools, the self-initiating programs that help you with your, with masculinity and your awareness and your, a lot of the programs, religious and otherwise, get involved with you, helping you to become a better person. And it matters not whether you were convicted of any particular crime or any number of crime. It's not about your offense, it's about you. So whether you think you are a police officer or a prison officer, whether you think you're a lawyer, whether you are of the opinion that you were wrongfully judged, whether you think that you were rubbed wrongly and you had to respond in a particular way, it's not about that. It's about you taking what you have now, using what is around you to make you a better individual. And I think every opportunity that I got with the direction and the support of the men around me, I was able to engage myself in activities like that. Soon enough so that after not a very long period of time, I was asked by some officers in a particular area of the prison where new persons are coming into the system to assist with the orientation process. And with that, with every orientation process, they had psychologists, they had anger management courses, a lot of self-development courses. So I would have to sit through a lot of these courses with the guys. So on almost every 2-week period, I would be refreshed. Sometimes not realizing that there's a lot that was said before that I had missed in these programs. So I was doing a lot of the same programs, as well as assisting in initiating new programs for a lot of the fellows who were at a level where they needed to learn to respond to writing their names and numbers and literacy situations. So I was given responsibility and task with that responsibility. And you know, I attack it with everything that I have, because it was all that was available to do. So it felt good to do something, as much as was done for me. I think coming out of the environment as a police officer, you tend to think that there's very little that you don't know, because you would have engaged so much on the outside. At least at my level, I would have engaged so much at a different level, at different levels. And you are misled into the perception that all you do is right. And it was them and us. And even coming into the environment, I felt still there was this sense that I am not one of them. But it doesn't take long for people to bring you to the reality, and that is guys in the general population as well as officers. There are those who will very quickly attempt to bring you into the reality that you are nothing but one of them. And then, like some of my colleagues have indicated on this very program, that you would meet officers who are enabling, who are supportive. And you realize that there was nothing in my standing order as a police officer, and there is nothing in theirs that dictates to them, whether it's their standing orders, whether it's the GOs, whether it's the law, that tell them or indicates to them that you have to show kindness, that you have to go above and beyond, that you have to show empathy and sympathy and support. It is something that is expected. And I have seen a lot of officers, young and otherwise, rise in more ways than one to this expectation. And I have to say that I was very fortunate to be around such officers. Along the way, like the police service, you would be around errant individuals. And you would engage activities that you think, because you're in the right. There's one thing in feeling that you're on the side of the right. So all that you do to achieve a particular end can be justifiably said, this was done in spite of what was done, because we're doing it for the benefit of the good, or you're doing for the greater good. So you justify your wrongs as being right. And you would find that in any environment, and that is wrong. And I've come to realize, like they would teach you in the training colleges, that the missing link, and you putting yourself in a position to fit and to fulfill the missing link, is wrong.
Do you think you are better prepared now to deal with persons on the outside than you were when you were actually in the police force? With what you have, the knowledge that you have gathered since being incarcerated?
It might be a bit presumptuous for me to think that, you know, my colleagues in the police service, when we entered, most of us 19 and 20-year-old, that they are not better men today, and that I am a better man now because of my exposure and experience. I think each individual have their own individual crosses to bear and their own path to walk. And from that, they would gather what they can to be what they want to become. I might have been an incredibly better person if I was in the police service. I would have been promoted along with my batches. Today, most of them are inspectors and acting assistant superintendents. I might have been there and been a better individual. I don't know. What I can say is that my thinking, my approach to people, my mannerism, my perception of individuals and situations is very much different from what it used to be as a police officer umpteen years ago, as to an officer, an inmate, and soon enough to be a person on the outside. I think my approach is going to be very, very different. I am happy with the man who I have become, apart from the fact that I have now a criminal record placed before my name, and I might always be viewed as not just a convict but an ex-convict. But I am happy for the man that I have developed into as a result of those experiences, being a police officer, being an inmate who had to find humility and to somewhat was forced into a measure of humility. I think those experiences and the programs that I was exposed to and the opportunity that I was given in the programs, particularly the radio program that I was exposed to and still am actively a part of. I think my exposure through radio, prison radio, Rise Maximum Radio, has endeared in me a type of humility and a perception that is different, that can help me, I think, to engage situations and persons and personalities very, very different, at least to a progressive end.
Do you hold any bitterness?
Initially I did. And I think for most people, and I was told through a lot of programs that I shouldn't talk for anybody else, I should talk for myself. But I think it would be remiss of me if I don't mention that my exposure to people have found that initially you would be very bitter with the system for being treated in a certain way, very bitter for the environment that you're placed in, because you never conceive of the fact that you would come here, that you would have to be here, that you would have to be told. I'm sure you were told that you have to get up at a certain time. This is what your meal is going to be. You either like it or leave it. You're expected to be into that program at that time. As a grown individual and coming from a certain environment, having been given a certain measure of respectability, and now to have to be told these things, you find it a little bit disconcerting. But this, I think, to me is one of the challenges that you have to deal with. And again, it comes with perception and humility and being forced into it, and a lot that you will develop. So prior to a lot of these exposures, the bitterness was there. And it stayed for a while. But slowly, as you begin interacting, and as you do a lot of self-introspection because of what you're told, because of your exposure again, a lot, and I will put a lot of credit to the programs that are being done here that a lot of people don't hear about, that you don't see. All you see is the individual that was, and then you see the individual as he emerges, as he exits prison. And to your mind, you see the same person. You see the crime. You see the tremendous amount of horror and disabling, or the instability that you brought. But you don't see the end product. You don't see that individual and the rigors that they would have gone through. You don't see the measure of self-introspection. You don't see the number of programs and how this person applied himself. You don't see a lot of the manifestation of this individual while in prison, and because a lot of people don't attend a lot of prison function and prison activities. Probably because for what it is. They may not be able to engage these individuals. They probably were parties to crime or victims of crime. Again, probably for solely what it is. These are just inmates. These are the scum. And you don't take time to realize that these persons, like little diamonds, needed to go through extreme heat, extreme pressure, extreme roughness to become the little gems. They may not all be lawyers and doctors and professionals and academics, but in their own little way, they are little diamonds making their little contributions. And I think we don't see that. And I think a lot of the refining the officers and the programs and civilian members who come in here spend their time and their effort and sometimes their own money to help these individuals. I think a lot of people don't see this.
Having the experience of being a former police officer and also the experience of being an inmate, what advice would you give to young people who sometimes you hear them on the outside, I'm afraid to go to jail, jail ain't make for right free? What advice you will give to that individual who watching this program?
Well, to a lot of my young people on the outside, let me tell you something. You know, a lot of time people tell you crime don't pay, crime pays. But this is what crime pays with. It pays with separation. It pays with hardship. It pays with loss of family members and you would not be there. It pays with humiliation and loss and suffering. And if that is what you want in life, if that is what you want in your life, then get involved in crime. If for some grander purpose you have some elaborate, purposeful, positive thing that you want to become or do in life, then the absolutely best thing that you can do for yourself is stay away from criminal activities, stay away from anybody who would lead you down that path, stay away from anything that looks encouraging enough for you to think, well, it's an easy way to an easy thing. Crime pays in all the wrong ways. Not because you're doing a lot of things on the outside there, means that you're getting a lot of things done. So stop running around. Even for the young adolescents, pick one or two things that is purposeful and is directed and go after it with all your strength, with all your heart. But it has to be built on something that is positive, that is real, that is fruit-bearing. And I think you're going to go exactly where you want to go.
Daryl, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to tell your story. And we wish you the best, and we hope that when you are released, you will make a positive impact on society. We thank you again. Special thanks to the Commissioner of Prison and the entire Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service for giving us this opportunity to bring this program to you. We hope that you will join us next week as we continue another edition of Freedom Beyond the Bars.